Yesterday, Fox Digital had an interview with the former president. He was blaming the other side for the rhetoric that was going on. Here's just a sample of this going back to mid-July.
Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy.
He's a genuine danger to American security.
We are fighting for a democracy.
We have to preserve our democracy.
Just so you know, that it's been noted that on social media, this would-be assassin had posted something very similar about a threat to democracy. I want to bring in Republican Senator Marco Rubio with us now, and sir, good morning to you. We just played that clip. That was going back to July 24th through Saturday. Here was Hillary Clinton yesterday and then last evening.
If he were really a leader, he should be doing what he can to calm the waters, not try to just continue to throw, red meat out there to get people riled up.
We can't go back and give this very dangerous man another chance to do harm to our country and the world.
Okay, there it is. I mean, it's right there on your screen for you to make a decision and judge it for yourself. How do you judge all that, Senator?
Well, I think if you repeatedly say someone is going to be the next Adolf Hitler, the next Mussolini, American dictator, there's been publications that have actually put out front-page stories that have to depict Trump looking like Hitler. If you do these sorts of things, you eventually have to conclude that the overwhelming majority of people that see that are going to say, we better vote against this guy. But there are enough lunatics and nut jobs out there who are going to take the next step and say, well, this guy is truly evil, if this guy is truly dangerous, if our democracy and our system of government is going to be wiped out if this guy wins, I need to take this guy out. And again, we need to learn more about this individual. We need to learn how he got there, how he, without perimeter, wasn't secured, who he was, and what was behind it. But I think we know enough about some of the things he's posted to say that he clearly was influenced in some way by this rhetoric about Trump being this dangerous dictator in waiting.
Senator, the Washington Post editorial board said that Donald Trump should be protected as if he were a sitting president. I bet that you agree with that, but how do we make that happen?
Well, it's a Secret Service decision, and if they need more resources, I bet you they'd find support up here to do it. And there's a reason why. First is he's not just a candidate. He's a candidate that now has been the target of not one but two, not threats, real attempts on his, or potential attempts on his life in this case, because the guy didn't get a shot off, but he would have taken a shot had he had a shot. The second thing is we also know, and this has been publicized now, we have a nation state in Iran that is actively seeking the assassination of Donald Trump in retribution for the Soleimani strike. Those two things alone, the two assassination attempts in the heat of this campaign, combined with the known threat of foreign agents who are seeking his assassination and have actually said so publicly, I think in and of itself raises the level of security he needs to be having beyond just that of a candidate.
On this yes, you mentioned the threat from Iran, and we have covered that quite a bit. We'll see where that goes. But with regard to this incident on Sunday, he told the judge yesterday apparently he's got no money. He told the judge yesterday he owns 2 trucks, and they're both in Hawaii, and they're both valued at $1,000 each. So we just heard from some of the neighbors in Greensboro, North Carolina. They're still well familiar with him where he grew up. I think this picture is confounding is what I'm driving at here. And he was either living on debt or a credit card, or he was getting help.
Yeah, but he had the money to buy those tiles that were there as like a shield. He had the money to travel to Florida and apparently sustain himself for some period of time. He had the money to find a car that right now we don't know whose car it is, and we know it had stolen tags, but we don't know whose car it is and how he got a hold of them. He had the money to buy weaponry. And so all of these things these are questions that need to be answered. And I think it's good that the state of Florida is going to be involved. I think the more eyes are on this, the better. I mean, we have a second set of investigators that are going to look at the potentially same set of facts, maybe discover new facts. But there are a lot of questions to answer relevant to 2 things. The first is, how did this happen? Was he working with someone? I don't know. We don't know, but we need to learn that. But the other is the copycat problem. And that is, as I speak to you now, and I say this with no great joy, there are potentially dozens of people out there that, given the opportunity, may do the exact same thing, and they watch the sort of coverage about this and try to replicate it somewhere down the line. And so I think it's quite possible that even as I speak to you now, there's someone plotting to do the exact same thing to Donald Trump or somebody else. So we need to learn how these people work, because we need to understand the warning signs to get ahead of this. Imagine if somebody would have driven by that street and noticed there was a guy hiding in the bushes 8 hours before Trump got there. That would have avoided a lot of these problems that we're now facing. It would have been apprehended a lot sooner.
Senator, can I switch gears and ask you about Tren de Aragua? Governor Greg Abbott talked about a crackdown yesterday. Listen to him here.
History has shown they first flood the countries with military-age Venezuelan men. Next, they began to establish a base of operations. Finally, TDA begins a spree of violent and bloody criminal activity. I am officially declaring TDA a foreign terrorist organization. We will bring the full weight of the government against the TDA.
Senator, I'm sure you track some of this closely. We're going to show a map to everybody here that shows the spread of TDA across the western part of the states, including, and then also to Chicago and New York City. But there's some confusion as to who they are, well, not who they are, but what they're doing and how severe it is. I mean, we've been going back and forth with Aurora, Colorado. What do you know? What should people listening to this understand?
Well, I believe I'm the first person here in Washington, maybe in American politics, that warned about this gang all the way back in January or February of this year. And the reason why is Venezuelan migrants were telling me about it. This is originated as a prison gang inside of Venezuela. Then they spread to Ecuador and Chile and Peru and neighboring Colombia, neighboring countries, and basically joined up with other gangs to conduct these operations, particularly targeting Venezuelan migrant communities in those countries. And it was inevitable. It was just a matter of time before they joined the migratory flow and entered the United States. And now we are seeing them in communities in the United States where they're following the same patterns that they follow in these other places: murder for hire, extortion, human trafficking, drug running. They're basically a organized criminal organization, and a very violent one. And now their members are coming into the United States because there's more money to steal here and more people to go after here. So this has been a threat that's been building since February, and we know it. When we raised it, we were told that we were exaggerating and that it wasn't true. We're now seeing it play out in real time and in places you wouldn't expect, right? Aurora, Colorado. We initially saw this in New York and in Chicago as well. But I think it's going to continue to spread wherever there's targets of opportunity. They particularly like to target migrant communities with lots of migrants. That's where they first like to target. But obviously those crimes spread beyond that to purse snatching and anything else they can make money off of.
Senator, we'll keep in touch with you on this. So thank you for being with us this morning.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.